Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Foxy and this is Foxy Books and Planning, and today is my monthly diamond paint along. I thought I would do one where I talked about some of my retail horror stories from when I worked in retail. But first, I wanted to show you all because I did finish the guinea pig that I was working on in my last video, so she is 100% done. And I really like the way she came out, and I really hope the girl who's getting it really enjoys it. And because I can't show this anywhere else, this is all of the trash from that picture. All of the wax is one little ball in the corner, and these are all the drills that got chucked. So I'm actually really pleased with the amount of waste that came out of that picture. Alright, and with that, I am going to include a picture or a better resolution picture of the full guinea pig as a thing right here so you all can see. But other than that, let's get into this. My setup is a little different today because I'm working on my London Bridge. I haven't set up my next project picture, so I'm back to working on my Old Faithful. So this is a 45 by 60 of London Bridge by Hynynen. I started this last year and I completed the whole top section. I started doing this one before I really figured out what my style for this was going to be. And so now I'm going to be doing my normal 6 rows, going down and then across. But to do this and fit it on camera, I've had to adjust my setup a little bit. So my drills are on this side, and I have a tablet set up by the head with the DMC codes and the symbols because Hynynen does not give you an inventory sheet, and so I figured this would be the easiest way to do this. So let's get started. All right. There. And this will be interesting because I haven't tried this technique on this picture yet. So this will be very interesting. But so, I worked retail for a number of years. I think when I finally sat down and calculated it out, I had worked about 7 years on and off in retail. I only worked for one company when I did retail. It was a national toy store. And I had actually gotten really lucky because I had no experience when I started working for them, and they continued to hire me year after year, even though I could only work for summers and Christmases. So when I first started working for the store, they were just starting to really rapidly expand their business. I helped open one of their locations in the DC metro area. Oof. And I worked in their doll department. And specifically, I was specialized in the dolls that had historical backgrounds. And my job was to both educate and assist customers in getting what they had come in for. And my first real story starts, I had been working there for a couple of months. It was the first summer the store had been open. And we had a family that was visiting the area from North Carolina come in. And they dropped hundreds of dollars on their 2 girls. They got everything they wanted, and I was the clerk responsible for checking them out. And I had checked them out, put everything in their bags. They got 2 humongous, we called them Santa bags, to get the stuff out to the car with. And they had been very thankful, and we had just kind of moved on with our days like you normally would. Well, a couple hours later, why does this always happen to me? Well, at least it's a color that doesn't matter as much because I got plenty of $9.39. But anyway, so I'm checking people out. It's a busy day in the summer because summers are always super busy because kids are out of school, so parents are shopping. People who are out of town have come to buy like memory gifts for their kids, or their kids, that's the only thing they wanted to do while they were in town was go to the toy store, etc., etc. And so the mother is standing there as I'm checking people out, and she's got her arms crossed, and she's got that I'm really, really upset look to her. And she's standing right by my register, which is in the corner of the register area. And so I look over at her and say, ma'am, I'll be right with you. Just let me finish helping this customer. And she nods in agreement and waits for me to be done. Well, as soon as I'm done with this lady, or my customer, the lady comes up to me and starts telling me how I've stolen from her child. So apparently what had happened was in between leaving the store and getting to the car, the family had misplaced one of the items that they had purchased. It was a like $6 book. So it wasn't anything super major and could easily have been replaced, but the lady was like, you've stolen from me, you didn't put it in the bag, how dare you steal from my child, etc., etc. And so I was really apologetic. I immediately called my manager over and was like, look, I'm so sorry. I could have sworn I put this in the bag for you. Is it possible it just didn't make it into the bag? Or if it just didn't make it into the car, like one of the girls pulled it out to look at while you were at lunch or something and didn't put it back. And the woman was very, very insistent that it was my fault and nobody else's, that it wasn't her children, that it was all my fault. I had ruined their day and that I needed to make it right. Well, so my manager comes over and my manager starts talking to the lady, and the lady goes through everything. And my manager kind of nods, and she's talking on the radio to our loss prevention group. And she asks me to step in the back. It's like, that's fine. I'm happy to talk through this. And my manager looks at me and she goes, did you take their book? And I went, no. I put it back in the box it went with and put the whole box in the car or in the bag. I don't understand why they don't have it. Is it possible that they just lost it somewhere? And so my manager is on the radio to loss prevention because she believes me because we've worked together long enough at that point that she knows I'm not lying to her, and I would never lie to her on something like that. And so she asks loss prevention to roll back the security cameras that are watching the front area to double check. And so we go back out, and the manager says, look, ma'am, I'm really sorry. We're checking our tapes to see what happened. I'm going to take my associate back into the loss prevention area until we get this cleared up. Is that okay? And the woman's like, yeah. And the manager's like, if you'll just wait right here, we'll be back with you as soon as we have an answer. I'm like, okay. So my gut is in knots at this point. And I have no idea if I really have messed up, if it's something that could have been avoided, etc., etc. I'm basically freaking out. Sorry, I'm looking for a diamond shape. Ow, there it goes, $8.98. But my gut is in turmoil because I don't know what I've done, and I get really, really anxious and really full of anxiety in situations like that because my number one goal in life really is to make people happy and make sure people get exactly what they want. And this woman obviously did not get any of those things from me. So we get back down to loss prevention, and loss prevention had already started looking at the tapes. And there was a video camera directly behind my register, and so you could see everything that I was doing. And they rolled it back to that customer, and we sat there and we watched the entire customer transaction, which took probably a good 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, because it was a lot of stuff, and they wanted certain things pulled out of boxes, but not all the things pulled out of boxes. And it was just a little crazy. And so they look at it, and we're watching the final thing, and we realized that I did put this book back in their luggage. So it's definitely not on us that they can't find it. So we all breathe a huge sigh of relief. Nobody's stolen from a customer. Crisis averted. And my manager is like, and I'm like, okay, what do we want to tell the customers upstairs? Because how do you nicely tell them that, look, I'm really sorry you don't have this, but we definitely put it in your bag for you. Is there any way somebody could have misplaced it between here and your vehicle? And my manager just kind of looks at me and she goes, it's $6. Give them one of the limited editions we have back here for activity days, and we'll call it good. And I was like, do you want me to do it? And she's like, oh no. So she grabs the book off the shelf, and she goes back up to talk to the couple. So the husband is now up there with his wife, and the two girls are running around the store, picking out more things probably. And my manager hands them the book, and it's I'm so sorry for all of the issues. We're not quite sure what happened. We're looking into it, but thank you for coming, and we hope you come by again when you're in town again. And it was a whole thing for the rest of the day that was going on. That had happened, and that a person had basically told me to my face that I was lying to them about their hard-earned money and over a $6 book. So the next incident happened I want to say it was that August. It could have been the next August, but it was in August, and it was a regular work day. I was working in closing shift, so I had gotten into the mall around 2-ish. And for those of you who remember, it was the day that we had an actual earthquake in Northern Virginia. And for those of you who don't know, Northern Virginia really doesn't get earthquakes. They get hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, but they've never really had an earthquake. And at least in my memory, we had never had an earthquake. So I've just started my shift, and it's a regular hunky-dory day, nothing to be concerned about. Just show up and get to work. Within 30 minutes of me getting onto the sales floor, that earthquake happens, which causes everyone, except the staff, so like all of the mall goers, or the majority of them I should say, to just pick up and bolt out of the mall. Like, they honestly thought the mall was going to come down on top of them. And so it took the sales floor a little bit to realize what was going on, because in our first thought isn't a hurricane. Our first thought is terrorist attack, to be honest. Especially after 9/11, like, most people's first thought is terrorist attack. But it was an earthquake, and so we all immediately tried to start calling our family to make sure our families were okay. And we were all kind of, lost, because we didn't have any customers, and we weren't quite sure if we were still open, if the mall was still open, if it was safe to go outside. And our supervisors come by and they're like, yes, there's been an earthquake. We've been told we need to evacuate until the fire marshal deems everything safe. And I'm like, okay, we can handle that. So we go outside, we wait for the fire marshal, we come back in. And while we're out there, we realize that the entire area around the mall is completely gridlocked. Nobody's getting in, nobody's getting out. It's just completely gridlocked. And so we're still trying to get in touch with our families because the cell networks obviously started having issues with call volume because everybody's trying to call their family and make sure their family's okay. Sorry about that. I have a beverage that I'm drinking. But so, understandably, the mall is empty and our store is empty. The only people left in our store are one mother and her daughter and the staff. And the mother is irate. I would actually say beyond irate. So she had scheduled to have her daughter's birthday in the restaurant next door to the the store, and was very agitated because her daughter was supposed to have her birthday party. And she kept coming over to us asking if we were still open because she and her child had driven however many miles, I think it was like 200 miles, for her daughter to have this birthday party. And we're trying to be as considerate as possible because it's like, we understand it's your child's birthday. You're just trying to make sure she has a good birthday. But you also have to be reasonable in that something that does not happen in this area just happened in this area. And so everyone is very discombobulated, and we haven't heard from corporate yet if we will in fact be closing. And so the woman tells us, well, she doesn't tell us, she tells one of my coworkers, who is by far the sweetest girl I've ever worked with, that she has ruined the daughter's birthday and that it is all her fault, and that she will be giving this girl's name to corporate as the reason why her daughter's birthday was ruined. And understandably, the coworker bursts out into tears because she doesn't know why this woman is upset with her. She doesn't know what's going on. She just wants to make sure her family is safe. And there's this woman telling her that it's all your fault and I'm reporting you to corporate. Well, so we tell her, like, look, we're doing all we can. We're still waiting for word from corporate if we're going to close or not. Just feel free to continue browsing. We'll help you with anything you need. Just, please remain calm and be understanding of the situation. So time goes by, and by this point, there are like 8, I want to say, employees in the store, not including managers. And we have finally been told by management that no, we are not closing. We are going to stay open because the mall is structurally sound. We didn't have that much damage. The only damage our store saw was a couple of displays getting kind of jostled. And what was it? A chandelier was kind of crooked. But that was the extent of the damage to the store. So we got told, no, we'll be staying open. Please stop calling your families. You can talk to them on your breaks, but we really need to get back to business as usual. Well, the restaurant next door, we had a deal with them where they would do birthday parties for us, but they hadn't heard from their management if they were going to be closed. Because it wasn't clear if you could consider a food prep area safe after that kind of incident. Because they weren't quite sure if anything had been damaged, especially things like gas stoves. So they were just very hesitant to reopen. And so this lady who's supposed to have her daughter's birthday party comes over and goes, can you check with them? They won't tell me if I'm going to have my daughter's birthday party. And I've come from 300 miles away for my daughter's birthday party. And at this point, we had nicknamed this woman the Dragon Lady because she was being needlessly mean to us. And it was all about her and her daughter and not anything about like, hey, we've had a natural disaster. We really can't do anything. Apologies for a natural disaster, but we can't control those kinds of things happening. So, me being the one person who kind of still, I had confirmed that my family was safe, that nothing had really happened to them. So, I am like, hey, I'll go over and talk to the restaurant and see what's going on. So I go over and I'm like, hey, look, I'm really sorry to bother you. This lady is really insistent on wanting to know if she's going to be able to have her daughter's birthday party today. And the guy looks at me and he goes, oh, the dragon lady, right. Well, our corporate has already called us about her, and we are not to tell her anything. That if we are to reopen, we will let her know her reservation is going ahead. But we're not going to do anything else until corporate says we can. And I was like, okay, that's fair. I can't fault you for that. So I go back over to the lady and I'm like, look, I'm really sorry. The restaurant still hasn't heard from their management if they're allowed to reopen or if they need to be inspected prior to reopening because of the earthquake. Our sincere apologies for any inconvenience this has caused, but we really don't have control over these things. And the lady just basically went off on me for no reason other than she had decided that her daughter was entitled to this birthday party come heck or high water, regardless of natural disasters, because they had driven from so far away for this birthday party. And honestly, I wasn't quite sure how they were having a birthday party, but we're not going to get into that. But the lady continued to look around and she ended up spending like $1,000 on her daughter for her birthday and bought some of the most expensive items we had in the store for this girl. And the bistro did end up reopening just for her. Like they were like, we're not taking any new customers, just people who had reservations. The lady basically had the run of the restaurant for this girl's birthday. And it was definitely one of the weirdest occurrences I've seen in any kind of customer service role, any kind of customer facing role that I've had. My next one, I'll actually tell these two together because they're related. They happened years and years apart from each other, but they're kind of the same. So the first one happened right after New Year's in 2012. I was closing and it was just me and my manager. There was nobody else in our department. And we had just closed the doors. And so at that point, because it was right after New Year's, we were closing around, I want to say it was like 10. So it was a pretty normal like closing time for a mall, like at the end of the holiday season. Or it could have been 9. It could have been at that point we had reverted to normal hours. But it was late. And right as my manager goes over to lock the doors, this lady shows up with this garbage bag and just starts banging on the doors. And we're just kind of like, what is this lady on? We're closed. But the lady just keeps banging, and because it had just been a minute, my manager goes over and unlocks the door. And this lady comes barging in and she says, I have a return to make. Which we could do because I hadn't closed down the last register yet. All the registers were closed except this one. So we could take a return, and we were like, okay, what are you returning? Is there anything we could have done? Like, was there anything wrong? She went, oh no, I just bought all this stuff for my daughter for Christmas and she hasn't played with it, so I'm going to be returning it. Like, okay. And at the time, our company had a very generous return policy where you could return anything at any time in any condition for a full refund of whatever you paid. Since since this particular incident in 2012, they have changed their policy. But at that point, it was whenever you felt like returning something, you'd return something. To the point where we had customers come in and return 20-year-old products to us, where it was like the kid had played with it, they had found it in the attic, they had decided they didn't want it, but their daughter wanted a new doll, so they wanted store credits so they could buy the new doll. Which, for those of us who worked in the store who had grown up with this stuff, we were like, we'll buy it from you, don't sell it back, we'll give you more than what the store will. Because a lot of the people I worked with at that job were collectors of these particular toys, so they were happy to get anything that was that old and that good of a condition. But regardless, so this lady hands over this garbage bag, and I start pulling items out, and I realize that this is not this Christmas stuff. This is last Christmas. So this is not the 2011 Christmas that just happened. This was like a year or two old. And so we start to question the lady more, like, hey, look, when did you purchase these items? These items look quite well used. Is there any particular reason other than your daughter no longer playing with them? Because she didn't have boxes or tags or a receipt or anything. She didn't have anything, just the toys themselves. And so my manager and I work together. So when our registers are closed for the evening, you can still use them for lookups. You just can't run any cash on them. So she starts using them for lookups. She starts pulling boxes off shelves that have the right SKUs. And so as we're doing this, I kind of pull my manager aside while the woman's looking around. And I'm like, look, I know the return policy is anything in any condition at any time. However, I don't feel comfortable returning things where she doesn't have a full set. And what I mean by that is some of the things that she had purchased were like toy sets where it was a camera and a set of photograph stickers or like a full play set. And I couldn't tell if she had all of the items or just some of the items. And I didn't want to return anything that we didn't have every piece for. And my manager was like, yeah, that's fine. I'll tell her that. I'm happy to eat that bullet for you because I agree with you. I don't think we should be doing this return at all. So my manager goes over to the woman and she's like, look, here's what we're going to do. We are going to be returning anything where we have a complete set of items that go in a box. And we will give you what the current price of that set is. Nothing more, nothing less. And if you have issues, you can call corporate. Which the lady was pissed, to put it lightly, because she had apparently called corporate before she had come into the store, and corporate had told her that we would take everything back regardless of the state of it. And basically what my manager told this woman after that outburst was, ma'am, we closed at 9 o'clock. Or 10 o'clock, whatever it was. You showed up 5 minutes after we closed, and we're allowing you into the store. We have both been here for 9+ hours, and it is time for us to go home and spend time with our families. So you are going to take what we give you in terms of a refund, or you can take this all back and come back tomorrow during regular business hours. And the woman got really ruffled and really upset because how dare we tell her, because she works a full-time job and she couldn't afford to come out in the middle of the day to return all this junk. And it's really her daughter's fault because her daughter asked for all this stuff and never played with it. Yada, yada, yada. So while this is going on, my manager's over to the side with the woman. I'm pulling everything out of the bag and trying to arrange it into sets. Make sure I have things. So as we're going through, it's like, nope, can't take that. I'm missing the stickers. Nope, can't take that. We're missing this. Can't take that. We're missing this. So her total return after all of that, she ends up taking about a quarter of a garbage bag back with her. And her total return comes to about $400. Not terrible, a little concerning. But so we go to do the return. And I asked her for the receipt, and she says, oh no, if you remember at the beginning, I told you I don't have the receipt. And I just kind of am like, ma'am, I can't give you a credit card refund without your receipt. And she was very confused. She didn't understand, why can't you give me a full credit card refund? I know exactly what card I used to buy all of this stuff. I know exactly what everything needs to be. Can't you look me up in the system? Can't you look it up? Can't you call corporate and get them to approve it? Corporate said I could do this. And I was like, ma'am, unfortunately, our policy is that if you do not have a receipt, you get store credit. And she was very upset by this because she didn't want store credit. Her daughter didn't play with this stuff anymore, and she didn't want to pay. She didn't want $400 in credit. She wanted her $400 back. And we went round and round and round and round and round. And we were like, ma'am, look, you can either take the gift card or take all this stuff back. Because the only thing we can give you is a gift card. Because unless I know exactly what card you paid with, because you have your receipt, this is considered fraud. Because for all I know, you found this stuff in a dumpster and are trying to return it for money. That was my manager. That was not me. And because I'm just kind of standing over there like, I am exhausted. All I want to do is count this register and go home. The loss prevention team who is waiting for us is standing kind of off to the corner watching all of this go down, kind of like, when are we gonna get to go home? So all this stuff is happening, and finally the woman relents. I'm like, okay. So we give her her $400 credit and she stalks away. And my manager just kind of looks at me and she's like, I'm going to have to waste everything that she brought back as damaged. So she thought she was just going to return everything and everything was going to be hunky-dory. But in reality, it actually cost us way more than the $400 because now we're not only out the $400 from the merchandise, we're pretty sure she's not going to spend the gift card if her kid's not playing with the toys anymore. And we can't resell the things that she brought back to us. And by the time we had counted everything, taken everything away, done all of the paperwork, everything, it was almost 11 o'clock at night. And everyone was pissed. We were exhausted, we were tired, and we were like, this is the reason why so many stores have such strict return policies, is because there's going to be somebody like that, which we all figured. What had happened was her daughter had asked for things for Christmas a couple Christmases ago, and it was so much money, and she had grown out of it, stopped playing with it, didn't find it interesting anymore, didn't want it, whatever the actual circumstances were. But the woman had decided that, well, my kid's not playing with it, I deserve my money back because I spent all this money and my kid's not playing with it. So she had come in expecting to recoup all the money that she had spent so she could spend it on other things that her child now wanted, which was really frustrating because we were all like, this is what we've come to? This is what a generous return policy comes to? And most of us were also, because like I said, this was my first retail gig, my only retail gig. But we had never seen such a generous return policy ever in any kind of business. And so many years later, Triangle, we had a similar incident where it was 2017. And we had this lady, our store was situated right next to a Sears. And so the lady had come in, with a shopping cart that she had borrowed from Sears that was filled with this stuff. And by filled, I mean things were sitting crooked, things were higgledy-piggledy in the cart. There was a ton of stuff. And she actually came in with her receipt. And by 2017, the company had changed their return policy to be that you could return anything in any condition within 2 years of purchase. So if you purchased something in 2017, you could still return it through whatever the purchase date was in 2019. No questions asked. But if you wanted cash or the charges reversed on your credit card, you were going to have to bring a receipt. And so the lady had her receipt. She was very much like, I bought all this stuff. My kid hasn't played with it in a while. So I'd really like to return it. And this was fairly early in that particular holiday season. I actually want to say it was like August. It was August or September. It was a weird time of year. And she had come in later in the day. And so she wanted to return all these things that she had bought the previous Christmas. We were like, okay, let's see what we have. And I was the cashier again, and I told my manager, I'm like, look, this isn't my first rodeo with this kind of people. I understand what she wants, but here's what I'm willing to give her. And my manager was like, well, let's do what we can. But we need to go in with the understanding that we're going to have to trash basically 90% of what she's brought us. Unless it's brand new in the box. And if the things are really discontinued like she says they are, then we're going to have to send them back to corporate anyway. We can't resell them, and that reflects badly on us. Well, so we start going through, and she brings in things that I have never seen before, things that had been discontinued, things that were collector's pieces that she probably could have gotten more money for on the open market than trying to return it. But basically everything that she returned had been played with the exception of one or two things from the previous Christmas. Because she had gotten a bunch of things on clearance when the company was discontinuing a number of items. And so she had picked them all up on clearance. Well, so funny thing about this company, when they open new stores, unless the item is like really, really new or really popular, if something's been discontinued, it doesn't show up in the cash register's database of items. So we would have to ring things in as what's called an XWY or an unknown SKU. And those were also a problem because one of the metrics the store was graded on was how many of these items were returned per store. And every time you used the XYZ code, you had to have a manager override to approve essentially the return. Because why are we returning things that are XYZ? Are they 2 years old? If not, then why are we returning it, etc. So we start going through this lady's stuff. And I am cutthroat when it comes to people making returns like that. It's like, if you're making that kind of a return, I have no mercy. And I will go to the letter of the return policy code. Like, I don't care what corporate told you on the phone. I don't care what the call center told you on the phone. This is what the policy says, so this is what you're going to get, is essentially my philosophy. And so we did the return, came out to over $500 this time. And a lot of the items, if they did scan, came up at half or three-quarter price. And we were trying to match against her receipts because she had all of her receipts, but all of her returns were split up across multiple receipts, and people weren't quite sure about names of items or what they were exactly, so it was a really hard return to do. So we get through it, and so the lady starts to walk away. She's looking at the receipt, and she's looking at all the numbers. And she comes back and she says, you rang this up wrong. If you look at this receipt, I paid like $20 for this and you only returned me $10. I want my full $20 back. So we do the first one because the first one was an honest mistake. It was one of those where she had paid full price for it, but it had since been discontinued, so the clearance price reflected in the system. And I had no way of knowing because it was an item that I wasn't familiar with. So we do the second return, which is essentially a price correction for like $10. And she starts to walk away again. And she gets 2/3 of the way out of the store, and she stops, turns around, and comes back. And she stands at the register and she goes, this is wrong. I paid $32 for this, not $12. I want my $32 back. And I looked at the item SKU. I looked at the item she was talking about. I looked at the box. The box said 32, but she didn't have it on any of her original receipts. It wasn't listed anywhere on any of the receipts that she had brought as proof of purchase. So I start looking through the rest of the receipts and I'm like, look, I can't find it. I can't prove you paid $32 for it. And she's like, well, I don't care. The box says 32. I want 32. And I looked the woman dead in the face because I was frustrated. I was tired. And I hate it when people try and pull this stuff, where they try and return a bunch of stuff to get their money back because their child has stopped playing with the toy. It's one of my things where I decided a long time ago that I would never spend that kind of money on any child for any reason at one time. That if my parents or my significant other's parents wanted to pay that kind of money, that was fine. They can do whatever they want. It's their money. But that I wouldn't spend my money on stuff like these kinds of toys. Because I found in working for 7 years for that company that the people who had the greatest, or the children that had the greatest appreciation for the toys were the ones who paid with their own allowance money. And that was how I was raised, and so I'm a big proponent of if the child wants it, the child should pay for it. And especially when it's that expensive and it's geared towards 8 to 13-year-olds. They have allowances. They can save their allowance money, sell lemonade, whatever they want to do. But they need to earn that money themselves. So the lady comes back and I'm just like, look, I don't know what to tell you. You do not have proof of purchase for $32 on this item. I understand it was 32 items. It's $32 on the box, but it's pulling up as $16 in my system. So you can either take the $16 or you can take the product because it's discontinued and I can't resell it. So I'm really sorry, but this is the hand we've been dealt. And she shut up and she walked out and we never saw her again. And pretty soon after that happened, my store minutes after it happened, my boss was on the phone to corporate because she had been really frustrated by this point because it had been just a day of people coming in being like, well, customer service said I could XYZ. I don't understand why you're saying we can't. And this incident was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And so my manager at the time actually called customer service, or called our management service line, essentially customer service for stores, and got put through to a manager and basically had this woman banned from our store, that she was not to be allowed into the store. She was not going to be allowed to make purchases in our store going forward. My manager didn't care the sob stories that she was going to give, but it was really obvious that what she was doing was returning all the items from last Christmas so that she would have money for this Christmas. And my manager did not approve of that. She did not feel that that was a reasonable return. And while our company's return policy was slightly stricter than it had been, it wasn't strict enough in her opinion. And she was really frustrated that we were going to take the hit for returning all of these items, even though we had never agreed to return the items. That someone on a phone hundreds of miles away had told a woman, oh yes, our stores will be happy to do that for you, without actually consulting the stores first. Let's see. All right, so I know there was just a jump cut. I cut out the last story I was going to tell because as I was telling it, I realized it probably wasn't a good story to tell. But those are probably my biggest retail horror stories with customers. In terms of coworkers, I really didn't have too many terrible experiences with my coworkers. There was one girl I worked with for a while who believed that she was a manager when she was not. And she tried to talk to the rest of the girls as though she was a manager. And that didn't go over well, especially because by the time that she had done that, it was like her first year working for the company, and I had worked for them for a number of years at that point. And it was just like, woman, you think you're all that, but you're not all that, and it's not your place to tell people what to do. When you're a manager, then you can tell people what to do. But as I found, it's typically that way in every business, or at least every retail store, where there's always like that one person who's like, I've loved this store since I was 8. I know everything, and this is exactly how this is going to work because I know how to do this better than anybody. And it just irritates the staff. But yeah, no really terrible coworker stories, just the 3 really terrible customers. But in general, I really enjoyed working for that company. I really appreciate the doors that they opened for me and the customer service kind of knowledge that I gained from it. Because now in my current role and in my previous role, I did a lot of customer service-y type things. And I really appreciate all the customer service techniques that I was taught. So with that, I will wrap this guy up, and I will see you all in my next video. If you did like this, please comment down below. Maybe share some of your retail horror stories. If you have any other kind of chats you want me to do, please just leave them in the comments down below. And as always, I really enjoyed talking with you, and I will talk to you in my next video. Bye!